Never waste a good crisis. And when it comes to the economic crisis, don't waste it when it can have a very positive impact.
You never want a serious crisis to go to waste.
The way we're going to win over the long term is not just militarily. We've got to win over hearts and minds. And what that means is we've got to invest in countries that have no educational infrastructure, have no means for young people to get ahead. We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
Stay tuned for politics and religion. The International Criminal Court is now studying the admissibility of charges against a Congolese militia leader. Now, let me remind you that this is a world court. First of all, should we have a world court? The answer is not unless we have a world government. If we are in world government, then we should have a world court system. Otherwise, there should be no world court. Obviously, the people that created the world court back in started in 97, and then it was finally signed on to in 98, ratified by 2002. They created the International Criminal Court, which is a court that can put you or me or any human being on the earth on trial. The charges can be genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes. They wanted to tack on crimes of aggression, but they have not been successful so far in defining aggression. What they really meant for it to say was any head of state or any military leader that was convicted of going to war without previous approval of the United Nations, of the world community, that was a crime of aggression. That's where they ultimately want to go. That one's on the back burner for right now. There were too many nations that were not willing to accept it. Well, at issue today at the International Criminal Court is whether they have the ability to sign. Let me just read a little bit of this. The International Criminal Court began public hearings today to consider challenges by defense lawyers to the admissibility of the case against alleged Congolese militia commander Germain Katanga. This is the first time that the court, which is based in The Hague, Netherlands, will take up a challenge to its admissibility based on the complementarity principle according to a news release. Now, what this means is in the original passage of the court, when the court was approved and then recently has begun to try cases, it was understood that this court would only kick in when a nation could not or absolutely would not place a case on trial. But if the nation was going to try the case, then the International Criminal Court would not become involved. Well, as this has proceeded, the nation has in fact placed this man on trial, and yet the International Court has interjected itself. This happened on another case. This was not before the ICC, but before the International Court of Justice for the case of Yugoslavia. They brought Slobodan Milosevic there and placed him on trial against the will of the Yugoslavian people, including the president of Yugoslavia. Milosevic by then was out of power, and President George W. Bush said, we want to try Milosevic at the World Court. The president of Yugoslavia said, we don't have any extradition treaty. President Bush said, well, you better get one. So he tried. He placed a treaty before the Parliament of Yugoslavia, and they refused to pass it. It was voted down. Again, the president said to Mr. George Bush, we have no power to extradite Mr. Milosevic. We will try him. And George Bush says, no, you don't. We are going to try him. It was obvious that a show trial was desired here. So finally, I suppose President Bush suggested an executive order since he was used to doing some things by executive order here in the U.S. He said perhaps you should just do it by executive order. You should extradite him by executive order. The cabinet of Yugoslavia got together and they did decree an executive order, but before it could be carried out, quickly Milosevic got to the Supreme Court of Yugoslavia, and the Supreme Court ruled the executive order unconstitutional. Well, then none of it mattered, because that night helicopters swooped in and kidnapped Milosevic, carrying him away for trial before the World Court. So that's what's at issue here in this particular situation. It's an interesting story. Also, President Obama has sort of shocked the world today by saying that he thinks Iran has the right to energy, to nuclear energy, as long as proper inspections are in place. Now, that's a blockbuster. We're going to see how that one turns out as well.